What's up, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Lattes with Lindsay. Today's guest is really going to focus on yoga and how to improve our overall functional mobility. She has so much education as well as experience with this field, so I thought that she would be the perfect person, and she is the one and only Melissa. What's going on, girl?
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm honored to be a guest on this podcast. This is great. Um, I am a registered massage therapist. I've been in practice for massage therapy for about 7 years now. And um, as far as yoga mobility, it entered my life when I was competing as an amateur boxer. So during my early 20s, I competed for a number of years. And it was, the perfect sort of yin to the yang of my sport, very aggressive, lots of hard training. I was looking for some active recovery for boxing, and I found my way to yoga because it was just such a great way for me to decompress, practice my breath work, and stretch my body. It just felt good. And so at the time, I didn't know too much about it. I would just show up to a few classes, and I just felt like it did so much for my body. So when I fast forward, when I got into practicing massage, it was sort of the same thing. I started treating a few amateur athletes, a few boxers from my days in boxing, and then really got into treating a lot of runners because I was a runner. And so I found my fellow run community pals were coming to see me, to get treatment. But that was always sort of thing. It was like, oh, what can I do to open up my hips? What can I do to fix my low back? Because I sit all day and then I go and run, and so it was all these little things, and it just and I was continuing to practice throughout this time. And then it was just suggested. A teacher whose class I had been going to for quite some time had just sort of popped the idea into my head of like, you know what, you might really enjoy teaching, and maybe you should just, or even just to give, remedial sort of exercise to your clients, maybe you should take a teacher training and see where it leads. And so I did. And that was really the initial intention, was just to use it with my massage clients. And not necessarily to teach in public classes, which I do now, but in the beginning it was just to use in clinical practice.
Oh, that's amazing. Because, I mean, at least you can be very diverse in all the different avenues that you can really get into. And that's perfect. How long have you
Mm-hmm.
been practicing the profession for?
Yeah, so seven, yeah, it's coming up on 7 years, seven really, really awesome years. They've really flown by. It's kind of funny when I start to reflect, I'm like, really? Have I? And it's really a drop in the bucket, in comparison to a lot of career paths. But yeah, it's been great so far. Hopefully I've got many, many more to come.
Well, honestly, you always have to, wake up and be grateful that you have no injuries, knock on wood, that are, you know,
Yes, exactly. And then for teaching, I've been teaching yoga and mobility for about 4 years now. Yeah, coming up on 4 years now. Yeah, man, even that, I'm like, seems like yesterday.
I guess it's good that you've been keeping it up, that's for sure. Where are you working these days?
So I am based in Toronto, Canada, and that's where I practice. It's also where I teach. Now, as we are in our, strange COVID-19 days, I am doing a lot of Zoom teaching. So I'm doing some online stuff, which has actually been wonderful. I definitely think I'm going to continue it even post-COVID, because I just feel like for classes, it just gives you better access. I have friends who don't live in the city that can now log in and take my classes, because it was always something that, people would comment on when I would post something on Instagram, like a video from my class. They'd be like, oh, I wish I was there to take it. And so I do think in that sense, this has been a nice benefit, is that it's been able to keep me connected to people both near and far. But yeah, everything, I work in a sports medicine clinic in the city. I also work with the Toronto Blue Jays during baseball season. And then I'm teaching, my fingers are in a few pies, and then I teach throughout, throughout the year. Sometimes I like to teach in sort of small spurts, I guess. So during the winter season, when I'm not having to work with the Jays, I'll usually do a small residency at a studio, and just maybe for 2 or 3 months do a weekly class. I'll just do pop-ups, that sort of thing. And then in the summertime, I also work with an awesome men's hockey strength and like off-season strength and conditioning program, where I teach active recovery, yoga, mobility to them once a week. So keeps me busy throughout the year, interspersed with my massage career.
Well, I feel like the viewers will probably have to sit down with a pen and paper and listen to all the things that you
Yeah,
just
yeah.
list off. That's so impressive. And I think education is the utmost important thing to continue during this crazy COVID, because my goodness, you never know when it's actually going to end. So, blending your careers together, how do you find like your body is taking all this in? Is it like more sore as you do more like mobility plus massage, or do you find that your body is pretty well balanced?
Yeah. I'd say mostly I feel great when I stay on top of it. That's the thing. When you're teaching, you're not always doing. So I have to remind myself to practice what I preach, and to go through the sequences and the poses and the moves. But honestly, from the time, it's what has always kept me connected to this practice, is in how good it makes me feel. So in relation to working, say, an 8-hour day with massage clients, I'm on my feet all day. We can be hunched over a table. We're trying to use the best biomechanics we can, but we're definitely in a specific position. You come away with it where your legs are a little tired, your shoulders and pecs, your upper back. And so if I can come home and be on the mat and do a few moves to sort of open that up, encourage better T-spine mobility, better rotational mobility, better, movement through my neck and shoulders, I'm going to have a better sleep, and I'm going to feel recovered the next day when I get up. And it's the same thing for athletic performance. You'll go through whatever hard training, going through actual games or competition, you're that sort of process, and over time, you're always going to be a little sore, always going to feel a little beat up. But if you can go through, a process of different, movement patterns, with encouraging with good breath work, your recovery will be better, and you'll just feel great.
Yeah. Is it normal to feel, tired or sore after yoga or any type of mobility work?
Sure, it absolutely, it can. So it comes down to, it depends on what you're doing. But yeah, there's definitely heavier vinyasa style sessions, power yoga. You always sort of have to look for the keywords. So anything that has sort of a power yoga or a vinyasa in the name, you're going to be going through faster and more challenging sequences. So yoga can be a workout. It's working through your strength, working through your stability, working through your balance, all those things coordinated in a flow. You can get a crazy workout and be sore, because you're often pairing up movements, working and challenging different muscle stabilizers that you normally might not if you're just in the gym or doing a specific sport. or if you're just sitting at a desk on a computer all day. So yeah, and my classes especially, a lot of people I think appreciate when they come to my class the sneaky bits of challenging, the sneaky strength, the sneaky challenging mobility stuff that we do, because I really try to get into a lot of deep capsular stuff into our hips, into our shoulders, and challenge you in different rotational positions, so that you can feel and move better. If we're always just doing the same thing, for example, with running, if you're always going in the same plane of motion and you aren't challenging anything moving side to side or rotationally, then yeah, when you do those things, you're gonna feel it.
Getting to know all the different types of yoga is super important, because I've been to my yin yoga classes and I got put to sleep, and then I went to a Pilates class and I got like absolutely destroyed. So what are the types of yoga classes?
Yeah, so there's, and especially nowadays, there are a lot of teachers and instructors that are even creating different types of hybrids. But when you're looking, typically you'll see things like a vinyasa style, which is usually like a one breath per movement. They're moving through a sequence of standing postures and on the mat. It's meant to get your heart rate up, your blood flowing, and just coordinate a bunch of different things from balance and that body and breath connection. You have your yin yoga, which you explained, which is definitely long single poses that might be a little uncomfortable, deep stretch poses that you hold anywhere from like 2 to 5 minutes. And you just you'll transition through, say, a 60-minute class to maybe only being in 5 poses, but you're in each pose for a lengthened period of time. Hatha yoga is more like a slow flow. So you'll do a few sequences, but you're really concentrating on being in that position, breathing in and out in that position, working in through different dynamic movements or just a deep stretch. So there's lots of different. Kundalini yoga, I think, it deals a lot more with like your breath work. Yoga nidra is, honestly, if anyone can take a yoga nidra class, it's basically like a guided meditative sleep. It is glorious. You just wake up and you just feel rested and restored. But it's wonderful. So yeah, people have, and then there's so many others. Ashtanga yoga, there are sequences where you're repeating the same thing over and over. So it's almost like a benchmark where you know what to expect, you know what's coming, because it's the same pose over and over again. So there's different like advantages and benefits to different styles. And it's always about finding what resonates with you and what suits what is happening in your life, whether, and what you're looking for.
Yeah, and I think that's super important for people to know, because I'm sure a lot of people have experienced all different types, and there are more coming out every single day, I swear. So, it's
absolutely. I'd say the current trend and sort of what I tend to resonate with and gravitate toward is the idea of finally meshing some functional movement, some strength-based stuff, and mobility work into yoga sequencing. So to me, just based on being an athlete and working with athletes, to me, this is what makes sense. And working with like the biomechanics of athletic movement and how yoga can then directly correlate with it being an active recovery for whatever other training and competition you're doing. And so I really look towards those styles of yoga.
Yeah, and I think sometimes with yoga, even just trying different ones out is also a huge perk,
Oh, 100%. You have to. I mean, it's like anything. People are going to figure out, if someone just says, I like to weight train, well, what does that mean? There's so much. Are you a power lifter? Are you looking at like serious bodybuilding? Do you just want to do like a circuit? Like there's so much that can be under an umbrella of weight training or strength and conditioning. So yoga is absolutely the same. And I would encourage anyone who's like, ooh, I don't like yoga, or I tried yoga. They probably just didn't like the one class they went to. And it's also dependent on the teacher. You could go to the same style of class, but have two different, whatever. Everyone's going to have their own style and the way they teach. So I definitely encourage people to try it. And the key thing, this is also part of what I was doing with my massage clients, is just reminding people, you also, doing yoga doesn't mean a 60-minute, flow class. You can use it for 5 minutes. You can just do two things, two poses, maybe you're just doing one. You know what I mean? It can be 5 minutes, it can be 20 minutes, it can be 60 minutes. It's what you make of it. And the beauty of the online world, you can find, things on YouTube, things on Vimeo. You can find little classes and sessions, things on Instagram that are anywhere 5 minutes to 60 minutes. So you don't need to allocate extra, quote unquote, extra time that, in your normal life, you feel like you might not have. It doesn't take a lot. And it's still yoga, it's still mobility, it's still stretching, even if it's just 5 minutes.
Yeah, for sure. 5 minutes is great for someone even who is interested in it and wants to start small and then gradually get into those classes that are a little bit longer, or going into hotter or just regular yoga.
Oh, 100%. It's super beneficial. I mean, as I said, like some of the other, some of the general benefits that you can get, whether it's 5 minutes or 60 minutes, it's all about the breath and body connection. So breath work is such an important part of my teaching, and with the classes and sessions, one-on-one sessions that I'll do, is just getting people to understand good quality breath work, accessing their diaphragm, being able to understand and feel all your little, intercostal muscles between your ribs, and, just how it should move and flow as you're inhaling and exhaling. So it's like that mental focus, positions can be uncomfortable, just being quiet, often, I actually prefer, I don't do it a lot in public classes, but I do prefer teaching with no music, because I just feel we're inundated with so much noise already that we should just be able to zone in and listen to our bodies, listen to our breathing. If we are in a group class, connect with everyone else's breath, have it be kind of in unison, and work together with that. That's a big benefit. It's just that mental focus, resiliency. You can build through or work through different issues, injuries, that sort of thing, just by going through some of these poses and exercises. So yeah, and it's just, for me, as I said, it's always about a good active recovery to whatever other training you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you don't play music during your yoga, because I think from anything that I've learned so far from this podcast is that breathing and finding your own place within that yoga class is super essential to you actually growing as an individual, to knowing what works for you and what doesn't work
Absolutely.
for you. So, with the different types of yoga, is there any benefits or comparisons to hot yoga versus just regular yoga?
Um, uh, Again, I would say it tends to lead towards personal preference. Like, there's definitely, I'm sure, some research out there when you start looking at heat training versus cold training, that sort of thing. And I would definitely recommend, if people are seriously interested in wanting to know the the deep science of it, to just do some research on benefits of heat training. For me, I definitely like to practice in both situations. So when studios were open, I did like going to some hot yoga studios, because I just felt like, especially for, say, for example, a yin class, I love doing yin in a hot yoga setting, because you're just in these stationary passive stretches. I find a heated studio already makes your body feel warmed up. and helps you sort of ease into these positions and kind of sustain them. What kind of tricks you into thinking it's easier, even though it's not. So for that aspect, I do. I mean, some people just like the sweat. There'll be chatter about, is it detoxifying and all of these things, but I just think it generally, the warmth makes you feel a little looser, feel more relaxed, so that you can work up a deeper sweat and sometimes push yourself a little deeper into certain stretches and positions. So if that's your goal, then I would say, yeah, try a heated class. Some people just absolutely cannot tolerate it. And that's fine, because in a non-heated, I mean, currently we're all practicing in our living rooms. Unless you're cranking up the heat in your house, it's really a non-heated situation. But you can still work up enough core heat and body heat and sweat in a non-heated situation. So again, to me, it's all about what you can tolerate and personal preference.
I agree, because at the end of the day, it is really what works for you. I know that, I've been to retreats where they've had different rooms where you can go into a low, medium, or hot heat yoga class. And, it gets pretty hot. So, but with that being said, I think it's really important to really experience both of the different styles of yoga.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, with different conditions, I know for massage, we have to really be careful of them. What kind of conditions, would you recommend that you should stay away from yoga versus, conditions that would help with yoga?
Yeah. So a lot of it is really about communication, and having a good understanding on what is going on, as far as injuries. So say someone has some, maybe just like chronic, I don't know, low back pain. So there might be certain positions that make that pain feel a little more cranky, or just sort of aggravate, depending on what it is. And so the person who's experiencing it needs to really be in tune with what positions are, and then just have that dialogue with the instructor or teacher, saying, okay, this is something I've been dealing with, just so you know, so that they could potentially provide modifications, a modified position, or help them, to build back up to it. And it's the same thing. Anyone who's dealing with any kind of injury or pain should really be, in contact with a healthcare professional, whether it's their doctor, a physiotherapist, massage therapist, chiropractor, to really speak to them, to say, these are the types of things I'd like to do. What's a good way to move in and move out? And a lot of it is just starting off, easy with the load, making sure you're not doing anything that's going to absolutely acutely, aggravate it. But yeah, yoga, certain positions, certain poses can absolutely help, with any kinds of injury rehab. It's just a matter of laying it all out and figuring out what works and what doesn't, and how you can, go about setting that up with that client.
That's perfect. Yeah, because I think that's the biggest thing. Like, low back is the most common injury, I feel. And, at times it's tough because, you put yourself in certain positions or whichever when you're in yoga, and it can fire up different parts that are maybe flared up prior to the yoga, or yoga could flare it up. So definitely knowing, kind of where to like step your boundaries in regards to pulling back from a stretch, or when
Exactly.
to know how to breathe and all that kind of stuff. So that's awesome. Have you had a pretty good success with the athletes from the Jays, for example, with mobility? And
Yeah, so for sure. My work with the Jays is strictly on a massage therapist basis. They've got a full team with strength coaches and athletic trainers, etc. And so they handle, all the one-on-one sort of mobility programming, strength programming. That's all sort of wrapped up with their coaches, and I work with them more on a massage basis. But for me, in my clinical practice, my runners, my run community that I adore. I work with a few that train throughout the year through different marathon cycles. So there'll be like a few sub-elite marathoners that when they know they've got race prep coming up, they'll start coming in and do some mobility work with me once a week, and then I'll send them home with like some homework on stuff that they need to do. And I find especially anyone who's been a marathoner and is a runner, everyone's experienced some sort of injury at some point, sometimes yearly, depending on the training load. So yeah, I've had really good success with just getting people to build back up through hips, ankles, a lot of hamstring stuff. So just trying to again, it's about encouraging better fluidity through your joints, through your muscles and tendons, building up that resiliency, and just getting your balance and coordination back as they're trying to get back into full recovery. So yeah, that I would say runners have probably been my biggest sort of resource and success of seeing how the mobility in combination with strength training and some manual therapy has really, really worked well.
That's awesome. Yeah, I find functional movements is something that people tend to forget how important it is. So it's definitely
Absolutely, and that's the thing, and it's the one thing I always try to stress. Especially as a massage therapist, I'm sure you've seen it with clients over the years as well. They want to come in and want to feel better, and we help to facilitate that, but it also relies heavily on what they're doing outside of our clinic space and off the table. So, making sure that their joints move well, that they can take on whatever impact they want to do. And even if the person happens to be desk bound and sedentary, it's even more vital. They still have to strength train. You still have to move your body. So it's just whatever manual inputs we're giving them to help them. That's not the be all end all.
Yeah.
The magic doesn't really rely in us. It's really, based on what that person is doing with the information.
Yeah, for sure. So when you work with your athletes, is there specific movements that you always do when it comes to, increasing their mobility or function?
Yeah. So yes. Yes. I was gonna say yes and no, but yeah, there's definitely a few key movements that I find we always do. So for me, I always like to mix in some kind of T-spine mobility, a lot of rotational and flexion extension. We don't get enough extension in our lives with our spinal movements. So I always like to work in a few poses that really focus on our T-spine mobility and rotation, especially in athletes. Rotational stuff, hip stuff, so vital to almost every athletic movement. A lot of core strengthening, and hip stuff, always looking at internal rotation, external rotation, really trying to get more movement into that workspace of the joint, to have healthier hips, and that really then sends the chain down. I try to work globally, even in my public classes. Like I try to target everything head to toe, but yeah, you're always going to find me doing T-spine stuff and hip stuff in every class. And breath work. I'd say I start and finish all my sessions with breath work, and just getting people to be connected in, getting their nervous system, really, really, really keyed in to what we're going to be doing.
Do you find that the breathing techniques can help someone who is going to yoga for the first time and, has a brain that tends to love to wander? Is that something that can really help them focus during the actual session?
Absolutely. And that's where that mental focus really, really comes into play. But yeah, being able to do a few different specific breathing exercises can really, really does help with that for people whose minds tend to wander or are just, we all go through days. Sometimes you're just feeling anxious. You've got so much on your mind. There's different external pressures. And so that idea of just coming, as simple as it sounds, of just coming back to breath. And maybe it's just counting, maybe you have to hum something to keep that focus, whatever it is for you. Everyone can kind of figure out, but like, yeah, if you can always just come back to your breathing and focus on intentional inhales and exhales, you can really help build that mental focus.
Oh, absolutely. And I love the fact that at the end of the yoga session, they always finish with meditation. And I find it's super helpful because it can really just like reawaken you before you continue your
Yes.
day. And, why is that they, always finish with it?
You're eliciting that amazing parasympathetic response from your nervous system. Our parasympathetic nerves right in that deep lower belly area of our body, in our lower abdominals. So when we're coming into that final corpse pose, shavasana, at the end, that's what we're doing. That's when you hear people that will just say deep belly breaths, because that's what we're trying to really activate, is that parasympathetic nervous response, our rest and digest. So that's why when you're finished, and then hopefully you have come into a bit of a meditative state, that you just feel recovered, refreshed, you've reset. It's
Yeah,
awesome.
I find also, I definitely find it's also a way of healing, because I've been in yoga classes where people are,
Absolutely.
crying at the end because they feel an emotional
Yep.
connection with how their
There's
body is feeling.
absolutely. Here's the thing. We carry so much external stress and internally, things that sometimes you don't even realize how much trauma. Like that's a whole other segment too of yoga, trauma informed yoga, that I would eventually love to dive a little deeper into. But that's the thing, trauma, takes hold into our tissues and everything. So when we have those emotional releases, it's because we are letting go of things, and it's our body saying it's okay. So yeah, breath work is so powerful. It's another sort of thing that I try to um, tell my massage clients, especially those with chronic pain, because it's it's tough if you're living with something day in and day out that you can't seem to get a handle on to quote unquote fix, or have it just dissolve or dissipate. But again, coming back to breathing, I find if you can focus on whatever areas of the body, and just how is your body feeling as you're moving through that breath work. What can you feel with things expanding or contracting? That can also just relieve a lot of that pain that you didn't even realize sometimes that you were holding on to.
Are there certain breathing techniques that you would recommend, like our viewers, to practice before they go into a yoga session, or is it pretty easy to understand when you're going through it?
I mean, you could, but I don't think it's necessary. Ultimately, anyone who's coming to a yoga class for the first time, is just make sure you know what that type of class is, and what's sort of the flow is going to be, whether it's going to be faster paced and strength based, or slow and restorative based. So once you have that idea, you just have to come with an open mind, and just listen to what the teacher tells you. Just follow those cues, follow those instructions, listen to your body, and just do what feels good in your body.
And I mean, what the heck do you even bring to yoga these days? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's funny. So in a lot of studios, sometimes they're full service, and you just have to bring yourself. So essentially, you want to be in clothing that allows you to move, um, unencumbered, and to feel comfortable, and to breathe. A key thing to note is, if you are taking a hot yoga class in a heated studio, is to definitely remind yourself to dress for the heat. So don't come in long sleeves and long pants if you cannot tolerate that, because it will make the class that much more challenging and uncomfortable. But yeah, you just want freedom to move. I would always suggest bringing water with you, bringing a bottle of water. If you have a yoga mat, wonderful. Definitely check the studios. Most studios will have rentals if you don't own a mat already. And it's usually for a small fee. But yeah, if you can just get yourself a quality yoga mat. This is the one thing I will say. If you are going to go on a journey, whether it's just yoga or Pilates or just stretching in your living room, honestly, spend the money on a quality yoga mat, because it will last you a long time. You will feel better, non-slip. Like, you want to look for like things that are a little bit cushioned, things that have like a good surface. So from a quality company, don't just buy, the $10.99, whatever, Amazon or Walmart brand yoga mat, because there's a difference.
Honestly, there is.
No offense to Walmart, but like, just invest in a quality yoga mat. That would be my advice, because really, even if you just use it at home, it's sort of that mantra, like, if you look good, if you feel good, then you'll perform well. So it's that same sort of idea. If you have a good mat, you'll be more likely to unroll it, have it on your living room floor, and do the stretches, or take it to the studios and utilize it. If you have a crappy mat, you're not going to want to be on it.
Oh yeah, man. Like, I've seen my fair share of, people using these mats, and they're so ripped up and, old and terrible. So, with
Yeah.
your experience with athletes and the general population, I find that there's so many unfortunate stereotypes when it comes to yoga and increasing or improving your functional mobility, because a lot of people think that it's girly, or, you have to be super flexible to, do yoga. So conquering those stereotypes, how do you kind of persevere through those to bring your
Right.
clients in and help them re-educate themselves on the values of
Absolutely.
yoga?
I can definitely attest to it, especially with a lot of the athletes I work with. A large number of them are men. And so, yeah, I think it's changing. I definitely think, it can be, when you go into a studio, it can feel uncomfortable if you haven't done it before. And you walk in and you just see, like, for example, if you are a man and you walk in and you just see a sea of women, and you might be like, oh, are they going to judge me? Are they going to look at me? I don't know. I'm not flexible. I'd say that's the biggest thing from anyone, regardless of your gender, is the idea of, I'm not flexible, so I shouldn't go to class and I can't do yoga. Yoga is a practice. You have to think about what your goals are with why and your intentions of why you're there. Everybody does not need to be a pretzel. Everybody isn't a pretzel. So there will be some people that will be super flexible, and that's awesome. Some people will get into those amazing acrobatic poses. I am not one of those people. I have a lot of tension throughout my body. I can touch my toes, but like I am not out here doing splits. I am also not doing crazy acrobatic poses, but that's not my goal nor my intention. So it just, you have to just remember, nobody's there to judge you. You are literally there for your time on your little mat to experience the class for yourself. So yeah, I would say any stereotypes that are out there, you just have to, tune out the noise. Yoga is for everybody and every body, small body, big body, in between bodies. Like, it is for everyone. And it's just a matter of, you do have to find, the styles of classes you like and the teachers you like that are perhaps lending themselves to your comfort level, because there is a wide variety of teachers, along with a wide variety of styles. So you just have to try a few on and see what works for you. Ask your bendy yogi friends, ask your super tight athletes what they do, ask around and get informed. And it goes back to one of the benefits about being, building resiliency and having some dexterity, is just, you're going there to challenge your body and to challenge your mind. So there is no perfection, and like, I'm winning yoga. Like, there's no winning, there's no losing, there's just being and doing. So yeah, just as I said, always just open mind, open heart, and you'll really, I encourage everyone to, just learn to move your body, learn to breathe through some of those poses, and find what yoga can bring to you.
Absolutely. And I think it really just truly brings balance to someone's life. There are so many pros to yoga. As a healthcare professional, we see it all the time. People who are doing yoga and helping themselves with stretching and even just daily meditation, you can see the difference in growth of that person. And, with this being said, is there anything that you would like the public to further know more about when it comes to yoga or mobility?
Yeah, I would say just to really just think about what it is they hope to get out of a yoga practice, and that can then inform what they're looking for in a class or in a teacher or any kind of online learning. So really, it's about zeroing in about what it is that you need before finding what's out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll go through a couple things, a couple different scenarios, and you can maybe just give me an example of what yoga would fit for them the best. So, for example, a basketball player who's been, in college for a couple years, had a back injury the last year, and now he's off for a knee injury. What would be one or two different types of yoga that would kind of help him rebalance himself and as well as keep that strength for the upcoming season?
Right. So with prior back stuff, I mean, a lot of hip. So you'd want to think of like pelvic tilts. And again, you're coming into thinking about flexion and extension, depending on what that injury entailed. It's just making sure that you're in positions that aren't aggravating it, but as long as you can get some good fluidity in pelvic movement, and that can, help with some back stuff, and breath work, being in different positions that can challenge that, tabletop, child's pose, that type of thing. And then as far as like knee stuff, again, it just really depends on what the actual injury is. But a lot of I find a lot of balance work really helps between ankles, knees, hips. So single leg balance. You always want to think about, even in strength training, everyone goes to, a deadlift sort of position where you can hinge, and you want to be able to have that, build that resiliency. So just starting with single leg balance work, whether it's like tree pose, or whether you're being able to get into, a warrior three, an airplane sort of type balance, and then slowly building up. Can you work into like a single leg squat? How does that feel on the knee? Also just tibial rotation for the knee, hinging. Do you have adequate flexion extension? I mean, so there's just, that's like more mobility based stuff. You just want to make sure you've got a good healthy knee joint before you're building into anything super crazy. But yeah, some yoga stuff can help with that. And then as you're getting into more, you can get into more like passive movements, deep knee stretches if you're in like wide-legged hero, depending on, your knee flexion. If that doesn't aggravate things, that's like a good stretch for your quads and your hip flexors, but you're also in an extreme knee bend. So yeah, you can build up to that type of stuff.
For sure. And then, for an upper body example would be like frozen shoulder. They, are coming off the mend of a lot of pain. They're super restricted still. Their doctor did just clear them to help, go back into therapy and improve their functional mobility. Would you recommend any specific yoga stretches or movements?
Yeah, frozen shoulder is tricky. Again, depends on the state of their external and internal rotation and their pain levels. So you have to be super careful, because a lot of classes and yoga flows will deal with a lot of chaturanga pose, which is sort of going from like high plank to low plank, like push-up sort of positions, and then moving into downward dog. And so if you've had frozen shoulder, you probably don't even have the flexion extension to get into that position. So, I mean, honestly, I would say as long as that person's working, if I would suggest that person really be working with a physiotherapist first, to really ensure that they've got the shoulder stability to get to a point of doing a class, like more so than just a doctor's approval. But there's a lot of low-level mobility work that they could start working in. Cars, controlled articular rotations, getting that stuff, isometrics, building into shoulder. So as long as they can get into the positions that a yoga pose demands, that's when it's okay to go into a group class. That person may need to seek a private session one-on-one with a yoga teacher, or mobility, and there are a lot of therapists, physios, chiros, and obviously massage therapists like myself that teach yoga and mobility. So I would say for someone like that to seek out the actual sports rehab professional that has that additional yoga background, so that they can really curate their sessions specifically to help rehab that issue.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's perfect. I couldn't have said it better. That's a good way to explain it. I think, I've had, the reason why I threw those ideas out is because I've had those two in the past, of people coming in as athletes as well as just, the general public. And, they tell me, should I do yoga? Should I do functional movements? What should I do? And that's exactly what I would have said.
Yeah.
You gotta pick the right profession, and then when you're ready, you can get cleared definitely for those types of movements. I think people are so eager for change.
Exactly. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, I always say, especially when there's injuries involved, is to really seek out that healthcare professional first and make sure that you have the adequate foundation to then be getting into public classes, or at least go the one-on-one route. It's not always the most cost effective, but in the long run, the investment is worth it when it comes to your health.
Absolutely. And breathing is so vital because you would be so surprised how much further you can get with just breathing with your mobility and your flexibility and all that stuff. So definitely try to really fit it and tailor it to your own lifestyle. I think that is something that is super crucial. And I think Mel would definitely agree is that you have to try different teachers and allow yourself to be vulnerable to get into these positions. And if they aren't comfortable, or, if they are comfortable, then really try and work on those and improve your overall well being. Because at the end of the day, one type of yoga may not work for you, but another one may. So, with this being said, is there anything else, Mel, that you would love to mention to the viewers?
And no, I think we covered everything in this episode. And as I said, I would just encourage everyone to get out there and move their body.
Well, Mel, thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate all the education that you have given us, as well as clear up so many of the stereotypes that come along with yoga. So, thank you guys for tuning in. My latte's done, and enjoy the rest of your day.